Need is my mic.
So this is Joshua Tree 4, Dhammadina Vipassana Center, March the 5th, 2009. Venerable Vimalaramsi giving the talk on the Majjhima Nikaya number 38, the Maha Tanha Sankhya Sutta, the greater discourse on the destruction of craving.
Oh, that's a nice word, destruction. Wow. Big issue. Sure it is.
Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living in Sawati in Jeta's Grove, Anathan Pandika's Park. Now on that occasion a pernicious view had arisen in a monk named Sati, son of a fisherman. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is the same consciousness that runs and wanders through the rounds of rebirths, not another. Several monks, having heard about this, went to the monk Sati and asked him, "Friend Sati, is it true that such a pernicious view has arisen in you?" Pernicious means definitely wrong. Okay. So you go to a monk and you say, "Are you so stupid to believe this?" That's basically what they were saying. So, exactly so, friends, as I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is the same consciousness that runs and wanders through the rounds of rebirth, not another. Now this is a Brahmin belief. They believe in a permanent soul, a permanent self that goes, it's the same self that goes from one body to the next, to the next, to the next. Then those monks, desiring to detach him from that pernicious view, pressed and questioned and cross-questioned him thus: "Friend Sati, do not say so. Do not misrepresent the Blessed One. It is not good to misrepresent the Blessed One. The Blessed One would not speak thus. For in many discourses the Blessed One has stated consciousness to be dependently arisen. Since without a consciousness there is no origination of consciousness."
Right.
Or without a condition there's no origination of consciousness. Yet, although pressed and questioned and cross-questioned by those monks in this way, the monk Sati, son of a fisherman, this is kind of a monk joke, calling him son of a fisherman. He was a son of a fisherman, but he hated the smell of fish. So the monks gave him this name. Still obstinately adhering to that pernicious view and continued to insist upon it. Since the monks were unable to detach him from that pernicious view, they went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, sat down at one side and told him all that had occurred, adding, "Venerable Sir, since we could not detach the monk Sati, son of a fisherman, from this pernicious view, we have reported this matter to the Blessed One." Then the Blessed One addressed a certain monk thus: "Come, monk, tell the monk Sati, son of a fisherman, in my name that the teacher calls him." "Yes, Venerable Sir," he replied, and he went to the monk Sati and told him, "The teacher calls you, friend Sati." "Yes, friend," he replied, and went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, he sat down at one side. The Blessed One then asked him, "Sati, is it true that the following pernicious view has arisen in you? As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is this same consciousness that runs and wanders through the rounds of rebirth, not another." Exactly so, Reverend Sir. As I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One, it is this same consciousness that runs and wanders through the rounds of rebirth, not another. What is that consciousness, Sati? Venerable Sir, it is that which speaks and feels and experiences here and there the result of good and bad actions. Misguided man, this is a heavy slap to be called a misguided man by the Buddha. To whom have you ever known me to teach the Dhamma in that way? Misguided man, in so many discourses have I not stated consciousness to be dependently arisen, since without a condition there is no origination of consciousness. But you, misguided man, have misrepresented us by your wrong grasp and injured yourself and stored up much demerit. For this will lead to your harm and suffering for a long time. We still remember him after 2,500 years. Then the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, "Monks, what do you think? Has this monk Sati, son of a fisherman, kindled even a spark of wisdom in this Dhamma and discipline?" How could he, Venerable Sir? No, Venerable Sir. When this was said, the monk Sati, son of a fisherman, sat silent, dismayed, with shoulders drooping and head down, glum without response. What happened with him was, soon after this discourse was given, Sati disrobed and he started becoming a very strong opponent of the Buddha, spreading a lot of gossip and all kinds of problems. Then, knowing this, the Blessed One told him, "Misguided man, you will be recognized by your own pernicious view. I shall question the monks on this matter." When the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, "Monks, do you understand the Dhamma taught by me? As this monk Sati, son of a fisherman, does when he misrepresents us by his wrong grasp and injures himself and stores up much demerit?" No, Venerable Sir. I think that's an obvious answer, isn't it? For in many discourses the Blessed One has stated consciousness to be dependently arisen, since without a condition there is no origination of consciousness. Good monks, it is good that you understand the Dhamma taught by me thus. For in many discourses I have stated consciousness to be dependently arisen, since without a condition there is no origination of consciousness. But this monk Sati, son of a fisherman, misrepresents us by his wrong grasp and injures himself and stores up much demerit, for this will lead to the harm and suffering of this misguided man for a long time. Monks, consciousness is reckoned by the particular condition dependent on which it arises. You'll get to understand this in a moment. When consciousness arises dependent on the I and forms, it is reckoned as I consciousness. When consciousness arises dependent on the ear and sounds, it is reckoned as ear consciousness. When consciousness arises dependent on the nose and odors, it is reckoned nose consciousness. When consciousness arises dependent on the tongue and flavors, it is reckoned as tongue consciousness. When consciousness arises dependent on body and body tangibles, it is reckoned as body consciousness. When consciousness arises dependent on mind and mind objects, it is reckoned as mind consciousness. Just as fire is reckoned by the particular condition dependent on which it burns. When fire burns dependent on logs, it is reckoned as a log fire. When fire burns dependent on faggots, it is reckoned as a faggot fire. When fire burns dependent on grass, it is reckoned as a grass fire. When fire burns dependent on cow dung, it is reckoned as a cow dung fire. When fire burns dependent on chaff, it is reckoned as a chaff fire. When fire burns dependent on rubbish, it is reckoned as a rubbish fire. So too, consciousness is reckoned by the particular condition dependent on which it arises. When consciousness arises dependent on I and forms, it is reckoned as I consciousness, and it goes through the whole list again. Now, we have a general questionnaire on being. Monks, do you see this has come to be? Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, do you see its origin occurs with that as nutriment? Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, do you see with the cessation of that nutriment what has come to be is subject to cessation? Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, does doubt arise when one is uncertain thus? Has this come to be or not? Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, does doubt arise when one is uncertain thus? Does its origin occur with that as nutriment or not? Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, does doubt arise when one is uncertain thus? With the cessation of that nutriment, it is what has come to be subject to cessation or not? Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, is doubt abandoned in one who sees as it actually is with proper wisdom? This has come to be. Of course, yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, is doubt abandoned in one who sees as it actually is with proper wisdom? Its origination occurs with that as nutriment. Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, is doubt abandoned in one who sees as it actually is with proper wisdom thus? With the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation. Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, are you free from doubt here? This has come to be. Yes, we are, Venerable Sir. Monks, are you free from doubt here? Its origination occurs with that as nutriment. Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, are you free from doubt here? With the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation. Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, has it been seen well by you as it actually is with proper wisdom thus? This has come to be. Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, has it been seen well by you as it actually is with proper wisdom thus? Its origin occurs with that as nutriment. Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, has it been seen well by you as it actually is with proper wisdom thus? with the cessation of that nutriment, what has come to be is subject to cessation. Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, purified and bright as this view is, if you adhere to it, cherish it, treasure it, and treat it as a possession, would you then understand the Dhamma that has been taught as similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping? No, Venerable Sir, you can't adhere to this. You can't hold on to this. You'll see in a moment. You'll get to hear what nutriment is and dependent origination. Monks, purified and bright as this view is, if you do not adhere to it, cherish it, treasure it, and treat it as a possession, would you then understand the Dhamma that has been taught as similar to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping? Yes, Venerable Sir. Monks, there are 4 kinds of nutriment for the maintenance of beings that already have come to be, and for the support of those about to come to be. What for? They are physical food as nutriment, gross or subtle, contact as the second, mental volition as the third, and consciousness as the fourth. Now, monks, these 4 kinds of nutriment have what as their source? What as their origin? From what are they born and produced? These 4 kinds of nutriment have craving as their source, craving as their origin. They are born and produced from craving, and this craving has what as its source? Craving has feeling as its source. And this feeling has what as its source? Feeling has contact as its source. And this contact has what as its source? Contact has the 6-fold base as its source. And this 6-fold base has what as its source? The 6-fold base has mentality, materiality as its source. And this mentality, materiality has what as its source? Mentality, materiality has consciousness as its source. And this consciousness has what as its source? Consciousness has formations as its source. And these formations have what as their source? What as their origin? From what are they born and produced? Formations have ignorance as their source, ignorance as their origin. They are born and produced from ignorance. What is ignorance?
Not knowing the Four Noble Truths.
You weren't supposed to say anything. We're trying to get some of the new people to figure it out. Oh well.
Why, they knew it too.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
So not knowing
Not knowing the Four Noble Truths. Now the word ignorance is kind of interesting because it comes from the verb to ignore.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they think of the word ignorance, they also substitute it with stupid. And this is not it.
No.
It's ignoring the Four Noble Truths and how they actually occur. Okay, the forward exposition on arising. So, monks, With ignorance as condition, formations come to be. With formations as condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as condition, mentality, materiality comes to be. With mentality, materiality as condition, the sixfold base comes to be. The sixfold base as condition, contact comes to be. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving comes to be. With craving as condition, clinging comes to be. With clinging as condition, habitual tendency comes to be. With habitual tendency as condition, birth comes to be. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair comes to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Now this sounds like it's a really confusing list. So I'm going to do it again. And this time you have to give me the answers. Okay? So monks, with ignorance as condition,
Formations come to be.
with formations as condition,
Consciousness comes to be.
with consciousness as condition,
Mentality, materiality comes to be.
with mentality, materiality as condition,
Six sense bases come to be.
with the sixth sense base as condition,
Contact comes to be.
with contact as condition,
Feeling comes to be.
with feeling as condition,
Craving comes to be.
with craving as condition,
Clinging comes to be.
with clinging as condition,
Habitual tendency comes to be.
with habitual tendency as condition,
Birth comes to be.
with birth as condition,
Aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair comes to be.
Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. This is how it arises. It arises as an impersonal process. And now we're going to go to the reverse order questionnaire on arising. With birth as condition, aging and death. So it was said, now monks, do aging and death have birth as condition or not, or how do you take it in this case? The monks said, aging and death have birth as condition, Venerable Sir, thus we take it in this case. With birth as condition, aging and death comes to be. So, if you don't have birth, there is no aging and death.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to stop with this for right now and go into another book for just a moment to show you something that is very interesting. If I can find- Okay, this is from the Samyutta Nikaya, the chapter number 12, the Book of Causation, page 537. Monks, before my enlightenment, while I was still a bodhisattva, not yet fully enlightened, it occurred to me, alas, this world has fallen into trouble, in that it is born, ages, and dies. It passes away and is reborn. Yet it does not understand this escape from this suffering headed by aging and death. Now then, when now will an escape be discerned from this suffering headed by aging and death? Then, monks, it occurred to me, when what exists does aging and death come to be? By what is aging and death conditioned? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is birth, aging and death comes to be. Aging and death has birth as its condition. Now this is while he was a bodhisattva. A lot of people have the idea when the Buddha, the bodhisattva first started out, he practiced meditation, and then he starved himself, and then he did some different kinds of meditations. But he was working, trying to figure out this whole thing of why the suffering doesn't have an end to it. So, then, monks, it occurred to me, when what exists does birth come to be? By what is birth conditioned? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is habitual tendency, birth comes to be. Habitual tendency has birth, birth has habitual tendency as conditioned. Then, monks, it occurred to me, when what exists does habitual tendency come to be? By what is habitual tendency conditioned? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is clinging, habitual tendency comes to be. Now, in the Pali, they use the word bhava, and it is always translated as being or existence. And you heard me say habitual tendency. I had a discussion with my teacher, Venerable Usilananda, and I told him that it made more sense for practitioners, instead of hearing being or existence, to hear about the habitual tendency. And I asked him if that was correct or not. He said it's correct as far as it goes.
But it gives better background when you say, I was very pleased to hear that instead of being.
Oh.
I noticed that.
Oh, good.
This time.
Yeah, good.
Because it gives a big background, habitual.
Yeah.
I thought I equated it with, what is it when you do the same over and over? You're hooked.
Yeah.
There's a different word for it.
Yeah.
You know, you drink again and again.
Addiction.
Yeah,
Addiction.
Ah,
I equated it with that.
yeah.
Addiction.
Yeah. Now the thing,
Lighter and stronger ones.
yes. Now the thing with the complete definition of what bhava is, it includes the rupa jhanas and the arupa jhanas. That's what it includes, along with the sensual pleasures. and sensual pleasures is what I'm calling the habitual tendency. Now it seems to make sense that when you have a feeling arise, and then craving arises after that, and then clinging, your opinions, thoughts, ideas, and identification, that the habitual tendency, what you always do when this kind of feeling arises, that's what the habitual tendency is. And that's part of the sense plane. And that's why I use that. And Usilananda, after thinking about it for quite a while, started agreeing with me. And then I went to Bhikkhu Bodhi and I told him that that's what I was calling it. And he thought for about, 3 seconds and said, I don't agree with that. But he was looking at it strictly from a translator's viewpoint. And he is a great translator. But I was looking more at the practical aspect of being able to understand this. So that's why I call it habitual tendency. Right, thank you.
Excuse me.
And then Arupa jhanas and the Rupa jhanas too,
Yes,
in that word.
yes.
Another definition I've heard is becoming.
Becoming is another one. But what does that mean?
Yeah.
Habitual tendency is very precise.
Yeah. It's the activity in it.
Yeah.
If we want to understand what he means when you say habitual tendency, if you work with a psychologist, he calls this your recordings. In other words, when your wife says something to you, you always respond this way, and those are your automatic reactive recordings. So he wants to you to change your recorded behavior. That's the same thing. So when we say habitual tendency, that's what we're tapping into, and everybody has a different memory bank of those reactions that we live, or we don't live, we relive and relive and relive.
We react and react and react. And what seeing dependent origination in this way is about is learning how to let go of reaction and respond with the clear mind, with equanimity and balance and the impersonal aspect of what's happening in the present moment, yes.
So this would be like conditioned consciousness.
It is, yes.
Yeah,
Very much.
so that you have the trigger, and then whatever way you're conditioned to respond to that trigger is how
Right.
it occurs for you.
It's the button.
It's the button.
What I've been talking about, letting go of all of your buttons, I'm actually saying let go of your habitual tendencies.
With the exception of jhana states.
Well, they're not.
I mean, is that what you're saying?
No, it's like if you
I'm honing it down so that it's more precise for your practice exactly.
Yes.
Leave the jhana states
Yeah,
alone.
right,
Don't
right,
even
right.
think about those.
Is it like a knee-jerk reaction?
It relates
What
to
do you call
our
those?
active action. It really takes the unfolding of
Yeah.
life.
It leads to the birth of action,
Yeah.
and quite often that birth of action has so much sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair that we suffer greatly
Yeah.
over and over and over again because we don't learn from our own bad habits.
I remember Usilananda talking about bhava, and he spoke for an hour or two on just bhava.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was blown away. I couldn't figure it out.
Well, he had a tendency to be quite intellectual,
Yeah.
Was that?
and he was very, very precise, so he's going to tell you every possible aspect of it. And that's the nature of Abhidhamma. But when you get down to the practical aspect of it, when you call it habitual tendency, everybody knows what that is.
Yeah.
So it's easy to recognize that, oh, I'm doing this again. And then you're able to recognize more clearly how you're causing your own suffering by always acting that way when this happens. Every time a painful feeling arises, I get depressed. Well, that's a habitual tendency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bhante?
Yes.
So the one part that I'm a little bit unclear of, because you talk about identification around the clinging,
Yeah.
but I always think, there can be clinging thoughts, but it's as those patterns repeat that we tend to identify with them more.
More and more and more, yes. But the identification in clinging is where you really big time start believing that that's yours. And then that habitual tendency reinforces it. That's yours personally.
Yeah. Because objectively it feels to me more like when there's, clinging or thought or opinion about something that's, because I can have opinions about lots of things. I don't take any of my opinions very seriously anymore, but when I have one that repeats over and over again, I have more of a tendency then to say, well, that's who I am, sort of begin to define myself by that.
Yeah, but it's more subtle than that. But it really does occur in clinging. Okay? Monks, when it occurred to me, when what exists, does habitual tendency come to be? By what is habitual tendency conditioned? Then, monks, through careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough in wisdom. When there is clinging, habitual tendency comes to be. Habitual tendency has clinging as its condition. Then, monks, it occurred to me, when what exists, does clinging come to be? By what is clinging conditioned? Then, monks, with careful attention, there took place in me a breakthrough by wisdom. When there is craving, clinging comes to be. Clinging has craving as condition. So now you start to get an idea of what I was talking about when I was reading from the other book about this. It's very clear that every condition has something else causing it. So, when you have a feeling arise, which is part of the impersonal process, that craving arises right then. And craving is so incredibly important because we can recognize that. We feel it in our mind and in our body, that tension and tightness. If your mindfulness is sharp enough, when a feeling arises and you relax right then, no clinging arises, no habitual tendency arises, no birth of action arises, no sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, or despair arises. There's this clarity that comes into your mind. Now you're starting to see more and more of the importance of that relaxed step. Keep it going.
Also accepting as it is, doesn't it? As things are.
Well, it has to be
equivalent to it.
accepting things as they are is it's an important statement, and it can be very confusing because it's not as It's not as precise as when a feeling arises, you see the craving and let go of the craving.
Yeah,
You are accepting things as they are when you do that.
yeah.
But it has to be intentional relaxing.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
And I think that what you're describing is a mental skill as opposed to just simply kind of a,
Instead of simply observing what is and allowing it to be,
yeah,
you're taking an active part in purifying your mind
right,
by the relaxed step.
yeah.
Yes.
That's a nata perspective.
But that is the most difficult thing for people, relaxing.
Well, do you think it's difficult?
No,
Well,
people just need to know how to.
I know.
Well, that's what I've been talking to them every day about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can say this. I identify a thought that's focusing on the object of meditation, and I get that I have a thought. Am I missing steps, or can the thought be the feeling, and as long as I don't
No, the thought
identify
is
it
not
as
the
my
feeling.
thought, it's okay?
The thought is not
So
the feeling.
I'm missing what happened before the
Well,
thought.
you have to understand this stuff happens really, really fast. Okay, and it happens over and over and over again. It goes from being just a little blip that you can barely see when you're really, really calm. But when your mind is not, your mindfulness is not as sharp, you're going to see it as it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's there.
So it's already formed
It's
by the
already
time I'm
formed,
catching
but
it, and it's a
that's-
thought.
Right.
Okay.
And when you recognize that and release it and relax and smile and come back to your object of meditation, you're bringing your pure mind back to your object of meditation. And that starts to build. That starts to get bigger and bigger, and you start staying on your object of meditation longer.
And then your skill at
And
seeing
then
it before it comes.
It gets sharper and sharper. Somebody equated this to like boiling water. At first there's little tiny bubbles that they're very slowly come up to the top and they pop and you don't see it. But when the bubbles start getting bigger, you go, oh, look at that. So what you're doing with your awareness and that relaxed step is learning how to see the tiny bubbles as they're just starting to come up, and then they will pop when you siksar them. Okay? Since I'm here, there is another sutta. I'm not going to go through every one of the links this way. Just let it be understood that the Buddha did use his deductive reasoning to see exactly how this process works. And another part of this whole collection of suttas is kind of interesting. And the reason I say it's interesting, I'll tell you in a minute. At Sawati, monks, I will teach you the wrong way and the right way. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, those monks replied. Blessed One said this. And what, monks, is the wrong way? With ignorance as condition, formations come to be. With formations as condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as condition, mentality, materiality comes to be. So he's going from ignorance all the way up to birth and death. And he says this is the wrong way to teach. And what, monks, is the right way? With the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes the cessation of formations. Now, what's being taught in this country, well, around the world? Life is suffering. And they're teaching ignorance, formations, consciousness, mentality, materiality. They're teaching it as conditional arising. They're not teaching the remainderless fading away and cessation. They're not teaching how to let go. They're stressing everything is suffering. Everything is dukkha. Have you heard that? A little bit?
We just had it.
Huh? Every Burmese monk I've ever met tells me that life is suffering, and they're eating this sumptuous meal and they're going dukkha, dukkha, oh, this is suffering. And they're filling their stomachs up with this great food. As I was sitting by a monk that was doing that, and the layman that was offering him the food, he said, "Well, I want that dukkha."
It's like, get real.
It's the cessation that we want to talk about. It's the cessation that we want to really show people how to attain. Not focusing on the negative, life is suffering, focusing on the positive. There's a way to get rid of it. I've been with people and give these Dhamma talks, and the first thing they'll say is to brand new students. They don't know anything about Buddhism. Everything in life is suffering. And that's all they'll say. And it got to a point where I went, and there is a way to let go of it. And then they all brightened up. But he was teaching the absolute worst scenario. You might as well get used to it, guys. Everything is suffering.
So grit and dare.
Yeah, grit your teeth and bear it. Heavy. Well, I'll go back to this book in a minute. So, with habitual tendency as condition, birth comes to be, so it was said. Now, monks, does birth have habitual tendency as condition or not? Or how do you take it in this case? The monk said, birth has habitual tendency as condition. Thus we take it in this case. With habitual tendency as condition, birth comes to be. With clinging as condition, habitual tendency comes to be. So it was said. Now, does habitual tendency have clinging as condition or not? Or how do you take it in this case? Habitual tendency has clinging as condition, Venerable Sir. Thus we take it in this case. With clinging as condition, habitual tendency comes to be. With craving as condition, clinging comes to be. So it was said. Now, monks, does clinging have craving as condition or not? Or how do you take it in this case? Clinging has craving as condition, Venerable Sir. Thus we take it in this case. With craving as condition, clinging comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving comes to be. So it was said. Now, monks, does craving have feeling as condition or not? Or how do you take it in this case? craving has feeling as condition, venerable sir. Thus we take it in this case. With feeling as condition, craving comes to be. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be, so it was said. Now, monks, does feeling have contact as condition or not, or how do you take it in this case? Feeling has contact as condition, venerable sir, thus we take it in this case. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With the sixfold base as condition, contact comes to be, so it was said. Now, monks, does contact have the sixfold base as condition or not, or how do you take it in this case? Contact has the sixfold base as condition, venerable sir. Thus we take it in this case. With the sixfold base as condition, contact comes to be. With mentality, materiality as condition, the sixfold base comes to be, so it was said. Now, monks, does the sixfold base have mentality, materiality, for those of you who like the Pali Nama Rupa, as condition or not, or how do you take it in this case? The sixfold base has Nama Rupa as condition, venerable sir, thus we take it in this case. With mentality, materiality as condition, the sixfold base. With consciousness as condition, vijnana, Nama Rupa comes to be, so it was said. Now, monks, does mentality, materiality have consciousness as condition or not, or how do you take it in this case? Mentality, materiality has consciousness as condition, venerable sir. Thus we take it in this case. With consciousness as condition, mentality, materiality comes to be. Now this particular step of mentality, materiality, or Nama Rupa, was a major breakthrough for the awareness of mind and body. Always before that, the austerities that a lot of people did, they did them so they would suppress the body and just develop their mind. And what the Buddha said was, hey, these two things are connected, and you have to be able to see them both. And you don't try to just develop one aspect, you have to develop both of them. The relaxed step that you have is physically you feel that opening in your head, and you feel your mind become very peaceful and calm, clear, bright, and alert, and you bring that mind back to your object of meditation. So it takes both the relaxation of mind and body. And that's a major breakthrough that the Buddha taught. It actually changed the entire meditation from what was being practiced to developing mind only and heck with the body, to seeing the interconnection. With formations as condition, consciousness comes to be, so it was said. Now, monks, does consciousness have formations as condition or not, or how do you take it in this case? Consciousness has formations as condition, venerable sir. Thus we take it in this case. With formations as condition, consciousness comes to be. With ignorance as condition, formations come to be. So it was said, now monks, Do formations have ignorance as condition or not, or how do you take it in this case? Formations have ignorance as condition, Venerable Sir, thus we take it in this case. With ignorance as condition, formations come to be. Good monks, so you say thus, and I also say thus. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. That is, with ignorance as condition,
Formations
comes to be. With formations as condition,
Consciousness comes to be.
with consciousness as condition,
Mentality, materiality comes to be.
with mentality, materiality as condition,
Sixfold base comes to be.
with the sixfold base as condition,
Contact comes to be.
with contact as condition,
Feeling comes to be.
with feeling as condition,
Craving comes to be.
with craving as condition,
Clinging comes to be.
with clinging as condition,
Habitual tendencies come to be.
with habitual tendency as condition,
Birth comes to be.
with birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair comes to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. That's how suffering occurs. And that's the wrong way to teach. We don't care how suffering occurs, we care how to get rid of it. Right?
But
That,
I was.
but, nope. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes the cessation of with the cessation of formations, the cessation of
Consciousness.
See, it doesn't arise now. With the cessation of consciousness, cessation of
Mentality, materiality.
with the cessation of mentality, materiality, cessation of
Sixfold base.
with the cessation of the sixfold base, cessation of
Contact.
with the cessation of contact, the cessation of
Feeling.
with the cessation of feeling, cessation of
Craving.
with the cessation of craving, the cessation of
Clinging.
with the cessation of clinging, the cessation of
Habitual tendencies.
with the cessation of habitual tendencies, cessation of
Birth.
with the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. Now we have a reverse order questionnaire on cessation. This particular sutta, although it said that he is talking about dependent origination in brief, it has a lot of repeating in it. And this is a good thing because it sticks in your mind and you'll start recognizing these things a little bit more easily. With the cessation of birth, cessation of aging and death. So it was said, now monks, do aging and death cease with the cessation of birth or not? Or how do you take it in this case? Aging and death cease with the cessation of birth, Venerable Sir. Thus we take it in this case. With the cessation of birth, cessation of aging and death. With the cessation of habitual tendency, the cessation of birth. With the cessation of clinging, cessation of habitual tendency. With the cessation of craving, cessation of clinging. With the cessation of feeling, cessation of craving. with the cessation of contact, cessation of feeling, with the cessation of the sixfold base, cessation of contact, with the cessation of mentality, materiality, cessation of the sixfold base, with the cessation of consciousness, cessation of mentality, materiality, with the cessation of formations, the cessation of consciousness, with the cessation of ignorance, cessation of formations. So it was said, now, do formations cease with the cessation of ignorance, or how do you take it in this case? Formations cease with the cessation of ignorance. The cessation of ignorance means seeing clearly and completely realizing that the Four Noble Truths are for real. And all of the links of dependent origination, every link has the Four Noble Truths in it. That's part of the deductive reasoning that you will start to see for yourself. You'll see that there's a cause. Okay, we got death. And what's the cause of death? Birth. What's the cessation of death? Right. And what's the way to the cessation? 6 hours. The Eightfold Path. And it's with every link. You can't really talk about one without the other when you're talking about dependent origination. They're what's concomitant. That means they come together. Okay, thus we take it in this case with the cessation of ignorance, cessation of formations. Good monks, so you say thus, and I also say thus. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. How many times have you heard me tell you to relax, and then the clinging won't arise? Letting go of the craving means the clinging and everything after that will not arise. That's why your mind becomes pure, clean. That is, with the cessation of ignorance comes the cessation of? With the cessation of formation, cessation of?
Consciousness.
With the cessation of consciousness, the cessation of?
Mentality, materiality.
With the cessation of mentality, materiality.
Cessation
of?
Sixth sense.
With the cessation of the sixth sense base, cessation of?
Contact.
With the cessation of contact, cessation of?
Feeling.
With the cessation of feeling, cessation of?
Craving.
With the cessation of craving, cessation of?
Clinging.
With the cessation of clinging, cessation of?
Habitual tendencies.
With the cessation of habitual tendency, cessation of?
Birth.
With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. What relief! Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. Monks, knowing and seeing in this way, would you run back to the past thus? Were we in the past? Were we not in the past? What were we in the past? How were we in the past? Having been what? What did we become in the past? You care about things in the past when you're seeing this in this way? No. No, Venerable Sir. Knowing and seeing in this way, would you run forward to the future thus? Shall we be in the future? Shall we not be in the future? What shall we be in the future? How shall we be in the future? Having been what? What shall we become in the future? No, Venerable Sir. When you see in this way, it's so liberating that those kind of thoughts will never arise in your mind again. Knowing and seeing in this way, would you now be inwardly perplexed about the present thus? Am I? Am I not? What am I? How am I? Where has this being come from? Where will it go? Would you have these kind of questions even coming up in your mind? No, Venerable Sir. Monks, knowing and seeing in this way, would you speak thus? The teacher is respected by us. We speak as we do out of respect for the teacher. Would you say that? No. Why? Because you have the direct experience. Knowing and seeing in this way, would you speak thus? The recluse says this, and so do other recluses. But we do not speak thus. No, Venerable Sir, knowing and seeing in this way, would you acknowledge another teacher? Not even the Buddha. You wouldn't acknowledge him because you're seeing it for yourself. Knowing and seeing in this way, would you return to the observances, tumultuous debates, and auspicious signs of ordinary recluses and Brahmins, taking them as the core of the holy life? I don't think so. Do you speak only of what you have known, seen, and understood by yourselves? Yes, Venerable Sir. Good, monks. So you've been guided by me with the Dhamma, which is visible here and now, immediately effective. Every time you relax, you see that it's immediately effective. You don't have to wait. Now, a lot of you are starting to realize that you're progressing very nicely in your meditation, and you didn't really expect it to be this fast. This is immediately effective. It happens fast. I wouldn't know what to do if somebody came to the meditation center and wanted to stay for 3 months. I'd probably be putting them to work after a few weeks. Because they understand what the meditation is and how to use it and how to carry it with you in your daily life.
Yeah.
This is the important aspect of learning the 6 R's and using them not only while you're sitting in meditation, using it every time you see your mind start playing its number, its habitual tendency, its dislike of this or that, its opinions and concepts, whether they're correct or not, being attached to them. You 6 R that. And you start seeing everything as part of the meditation. And that leads to liberation. You become content. You become uplifted, you become happy, and you have this balanced mind, no matter whether you're in a stressful situation or not. That's what I'm trying to show you. That's what the Buddha did. He showed us all. What a great man he was. Inviting inspection, onward leading to be experienced by the wise for themselves. Now what does that mean, to be experienced by the wise? When you start seeing the dependent origination, you're experiencing it for yourself, and you're becoming wise. For it was with reference to this that it was said, monks, this Dhamma is visible here and now, immediately effective, inviting inspection, onward leading to be experienced by the wise for themselves. Monks, the conception of the embryo in the womb takes place through the union of three things. Here there is the union of the mother and the father, but it is not the mother's season, and the being to be reborn is not present. In this case, there is no conception of an embryo in the womb. Here there is the union of the mother and father, and it is the mother's season, but the being to be reborn is not present. In that case, too, there is no conception of an embryo in the womb. But when there is the union of mother and father, and it is the mother's season, and the being to reborn is present, then the union of these three things, with the union of these three things, the conception of an embryo in a womb takes place. The mother carries the embryo in a womb for 9 or 10 months. 10 months. With much anxiety as a heavy burden. Then at the end of 9 or 10 months, the mother gives birth, which much anxiety is a heavy burden. Then when the child is born, she nourishes it with her own blood, for the mother's breast milk is called the blood in the noble one's discipline. When he grows up and his faculties mature, the child plays such games as toy plows, tip cat, somersaults, toy windmills, toy measures, toy carts, a toy bow and arrow.
No video games?
During the time of the Buddha, I think it would have been interesting. They didn't even have light bulbs. When he grows up and his faculties mature further, the youth enjoys himself, provided and endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, with forms cognizable by the eye, with sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire, and provocative of lust. On seeing a form with the eye, he lusts after it if it's pleasing. He dislikes it if it is unpleasing. He abides with mindfulness of the body unestablished. With a limited mind, he does not understand as it actually is the deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom, wherein these evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. Engaged it as he is in favoring and opposing whatever feeling he feels, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He delights in that feeling, welcomes it, and remains holding to it. As he does so, delight arises in him. Now, delight in feelings is clinging. With his clinging as condition, habitual tendency comes to be. With habitual tendency as condition, birth comes to be. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. On hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on touching a tangible with the body, on cognizing a mind object with mind. He lusts after it if it is pleasing. He dislikes it if it's unpleasing. Lust and dislike are the same coin, but different sides. One is trying to reach out and grab, and the other side is trying to push away. Now, delight in things is clinging. With clinging as condition, habitual tendency comes to be. With habitual tendency as condition, birth comes to be. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Okay. Here, monks, a Tathagata, this is what the Buddha called himself, the Tathagata, appears in a world accomplished, fully enlightened. Perfect in true knowledge and conduct, sublime knower of worlds, incomparable leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. He declares this world with its gods, its Maras and its Brahmas, this generation with its recluse and Brahmins, its princes and its people, which he has himself realized with direct knowledge. He teaches the Dhamma, good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, and he reveals a holy life that is utterly perfect and pure. A householder or householder's son, or one born in some other clan, hears the Dhamma. On hearing the Dhamma, he acquires faith in the Tathagata. Possessing that faith, he considers thus: household life is crowded and dusty. Life gone forth is wide open. It is not easy, while living in a home, to lead a holy life utterly perfect and pure. But that doesn't mean you can't. Okay? Suppose I shave off my hair and beard and put on a yellow robe and go forth from the home life into homelessness on a later occasion, abandoning a small or large fortune, abandoning a small or large circle of relatives. He shaves off his hair and beard and puts on the yellow robe and goes forth from the home life into homelessness. Having gone forth and possessing a monk's training and way of life, abandoning the killing of living beings, he abstains from killing living beings. With rod and weapon laid aside, gentle and kindly, he abides compassionate to all living beings. Abandoning the taking of what is not given, he abstains from taking what is not given. Taking only what is given, expecting only what is given. By not stealing, he abides in purity, abandoning in celibacy. He observes celibacy, living apart, abstaining from sexual intercourse. Abandoning false speech, he abstains from false speech. He speaks truth, he adheres to truth, is trustworthy and reliable, one who is no deceiver of the world. Abandoning malicious speech, He abstains from malicious speech. He does not repeat elsewhere what he has heard here in order to divide those people from these. Nor does he repeat to these people what he has heard elsewhere in order to divide these people from those. Thus he is one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of friendship, who enables concord, enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights in concord, a speaker of words that promote concord. Abandoning harsh speech, he abstains from harsh speech. He speaks such words as are gentle, pleasing to the ear, and lovable, so as go to the heart, are courteous and desired by many, and agreeable to many. Abandoning gossip, he abstains from gossip. He speaks at the right time, speaks what is fact, speaks what is good, speaks on the Dhamma and the discipline. At the right time, he speaks such words as are worth recording, reasonable, moderate, and beneficial. He abstains from injuring seeds and plants. He practices eating only in one part of the day, abstaining from eating at night and outside the proper time. He abstains from dancing, singing, music, and shows. He abstains from wearing garlands, smartening himself with scent, and embellishing himself with unguents. He abstains from high and large couches. He abstains from accepting gold and silver. He abstains from accepting raw grain. He abstains from accepting raw meat. He abstains from accepting women and girls. During the time of the Buddha, when a family couldn't afford to feed women in the family or girls, they would try to give them to monks, give them away. So monks can't accept that. He abstains from accepting men and women slaves. He abstains from accepting goats and sheep. He abstains from accepting fowls and pigs. He abstains from accepting elephants, cattle, horses, and mares. He abstains from accepting fields and land. He abstains from going on errands and running messages. He abstains from buying and selling. He abstains from false weights, false measures, and false metals. He abstains from cheating, deceiving, and defrauding. He abstains from wounding, murdering, binding, brigandage, plunder, and violence. He becomes content with robes to protect his body, with alms food to maintain his stomach, and wherever he goes, he sets out taking only these things with him, and a pickup truck with all the other stuff. The computer, the books.
The balls, everything.
One of the hardest things for me in Asia in traveling was I always had about 50 kilos of books with me. I couldn't travel anywhere without books. I developed pretty good muscles, but it was hard travel. Just as a bird, wherever he flies with his wings as his only burden, so too the monk becomes content with robes to protect his body, with alms food to maintain his stomach. Wherever he goes, he sets out taking only these with him. Possessing the aggregate of noble virtue, he experiences within himself the bliss that is blameless. On seeing a form with the eye, he does not grasp at its signs and features. What does that mean? Does not grasp at its signs and features.
Not getting involved with the eyes. The objects. See it again.
He does not grasp at its signs and features.
He does the 6 R's.
He practices the 6 R's.
Yes.
Yeah. since if he left the eye faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade him. He practices the way of its restraint. He guards the eye faculty, undertakes restraint of the eye faculty, on hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on touching a tangible with the body, on cognizing a mind object with mind. He does not grasp at its signs and features. Now, this is especially true for mind and mind objects. You don't pay attention to the content of thoughts. Now, there's a difference between a distracting thought and an observation thought. A distracting thought is something that's going to happen tomorrow or something that happened yesterday. An observation thought is what's happening right now. My mind is very peaceful right now. My back is nice and straight. My body feels very comfortable. My mind feels very comfortable. Those kind of thoughts do not have craving in them. But when you start thinking about the future and thinking about the past, that's when you run into problems. Because you start taking it personally. It's not observing anything, it's getting into the dream worlds. Since if he left the mind faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade him. He practices the way of its restraint. He guards the mind faculty. He undertakes the restraint of the mind faculty. Possessing this noble restraint of the faculties, he experiences within himself a bliss that is unsullied. He becomes one who acts in full awareness when going forward and returning, who acts in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away, who acts in full awareness when flexing and extending his limbs, who acts in full awareness when wearing his robe and carrying his outer robe and bowl, who acts in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food and tasting, who acts in full awareness when defecating and urinating, who acts in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking and keeping silent. Full awareness of what?
The present moment.
What mind is doing in the present
The
moment.
objects of the mind, of consciousness.
Well, it's just watching so that your mind doesn't take off and ho-hum around and get lost 1,000 miles away.
You're watching where your
Habitual
attention
tendencies.
is.
Paying attention to what you're doing and staying in the present moment. Possessing this aggregate of noble virtue, this noble restraint of the faculties, possessing this noble mindfulness and full awareness, he resorts to a secluded resting place, the forest, the root of a tree, a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw. On returning from his alms round after his meal, he sits down, folding his legs crosswise, setting his body erect, and establishes mindfulness before him. Abandoning covetousness for the world, he abides with a mind free from covetousness. He purifies his mind from covetousness. Abandoning ill will and hatred, he abides with a mind free from ill will, compassionate for the welfare of all living beings. He purifies his mind from ill will and hatred. Abandoning sloth and torpor, he abides free from sloth and torpor. one of the things that I forgot to tell you about sloth and torpor is you want to sit where it's very bright light. Now, one of the things that you notice in the morning, they leave this light on very bright. I prefer that you leave all the lights on very bright, because this helps you overcome sleepiness. And I know some people have the idea that it's supposed to be dim, but that's good for sleeping. It doesn't wake you up very much. But another thing that helps with sloth and torpor is not being inside. Sitting outside, especially if you can be up a little bit and get a feeling of expansion around you. I had a student in Malaysia that she did retreats with me every time I gave a retreat, which was often. And she always had sloth and torpor. I tried everything I could think to get her so that the sloth and torpor didn't come. And one day I said, and we're able to sit in these big, huge halls, you know, and high ceilings, so you don't really feel claustrophobic. And one day I said, I want you to go outside and sit just outside the door. And it was on the second floor, and I was overlooking a valley, and it was real nice. And then I went to her after the sitting, and I said, how was that? She said, I wasn't sleepy at all. So from then on, I had her sitting outside, and she didn't suffer from the sloth and torpor anymore. It was kind of an amazing thing. He purifies his mind from sloth and torpor, abandoning restlessness and anxiety. He abides unagitated with a mind inwardly peaceful. He purifies his mind from restlessness and anxiety. Abandoning doubt, he abides, having gone beyond doubt, unperplexed about wholesome states. He purifies his mind from doubt. Having thus abandoned these 5 hindrances, imperfections of mind that weaken wisdom, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, he enters upon and abides in the first jhana. With the stilling of thinking and examining thought, he enters upon and abides in the second jhana. With the fading away of joy, he enters upon and abides in the third jhana. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, he enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana. On seeing a form with the eye, he does not lust after it if it is pleasing. He does not dislike it if it's unpleasing. He abides with mindfulness of his body established, with an immeasurable mind. What is an immeasurable mind?
Foremost jhana.
It is loving kindness. It is compassion, joy, and equanimity. They're measureless, they're boundless, there's no... So right here is talking about the Brahma Viharas and loving kindness. He understands as it actually is the deliverance of mind and deliverance by wisdom, whereby those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. Having thus abandoned favoring and opposing, whatever feeling he feels, whether pleasant or painful, or neither pleasant nor painful, he does not delight in that feeling, welcome it, and remain holding to it. As he does not do so, delight in the feeling ceases in him. With the cessation of this delight comes the cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging, the cessation of habitual tendency. With the cessation of habitual tendency, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. On hearing a sound with the ear, on smelling an odor with the nose, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, on touching a tangible with the body, on cognizing a mind object with mind. He does not lust after it if it is pleasing. He does not delight in it if it's unpleasing. With the cessation of his delight comes the cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging, cessation of habitual tendency. With the cessation of habitual tendency, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, cessation of death, sorrow, aging, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. Monks, remember this deliverance through the destruction of craving as taught in brief by me. But the monk Sati, son of a fisherman, is caught up in a vast web of craving, in a tamil of craving. That is what the Blessed One said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. Now, there's one more thing that I wanted to do. This is a quickie. What number is that? 40. Now I'm reading from the Samyutta Nikaya again, page 543. This is 14 for the ascetics and Brahmins. This is going to show you a couple of things. How the Four Noble Truths work in dependent origination, and that if you don't see dependent origination, you will not be able to attain Nibbana. So, at Sawati, monks, as to those ascetics and Brahmins who do not understand these things, the origin of these things, the cessation of these things, and the way leading to the cessation of these things, what are those things that they do not understand, whose origin they don't understand, whose cessation they don't understand, and the way leading to the cessation they don't understand? They do not understand aging and death, its origin, cessation, and way leading to the cessation. They do not understand birth, habitual tendency, clinging, craving, feeling, contact, six sense doors, mentality, materiality, consciousness, formations, their origin, the cessation, and the way leading to the cessation. These are the things they do not understand, whose origin they do not understand, whose cessation they do not understand, and the way leading to whose cessation they do not understand. These I do not consider ascetics among ascetics or Brahman among Brahmins. And these venerable ones do not, by realizing it for themselves with direct knowledge, in this very lifetime enter and dwell in the goal of asceticism and the goal of Brahmanhood. That means Nibbana. So it says right there that if you're focusing on anicca, dukkha, anatta, on impermanent suffering and not self as being the end goal, you're not going to attain Nibbana that way. You have to see the deeper aspect, and that is dependent origination. In the Mahavagga, it says, You can see one or all of the three characteristics of existence and never see dependent origination. But when you see dependent origination, you will see these three characteristics. So that's another thing to consider. And the importance of, okay, it's on the back of it, so I just said it again. That's the importance of what we were studying tonight, what we were reciting tonight. When you come to visit me in Missouri, or if you come to visit me in Missouri, look forward to being able to recognize and say all of those links of dependent origination often. Okay, does anybody have any questions?
It's sort of just, why do they call the Brahma Viharas? That's sort of, those are Sanskrit words.
There was Brahmins during the time of the Buddha.
Yeah, so, I mean, isn't it the houses of Brahma or something like that? I mean,
Well, a vihara is abode, dwelling, and the Brahmaloka is what you experience when you get into the Brahma Viharas. The Brahmaloka is the fine material plane. There's the Devaloka, but you don't have to do any mental development to get into that. You just have to be a good person, practice your generosity, and help other people and be happy. And you'll be reborn in a Devaloka. A Brahmaloka only can be attained through the development of mental cultivation.
the other part of the question is, did they do this stuff before the Buddha, some of these, the Brahma Vihara meditation?
They had their own practice, but they didn't know how deep it was supposed to go. And part of the commentary from the Visuddhimagga tells you that it only goes to loving kindness will take you to the third jhana, and compassion will take you to the third jhana, and joy will take you to the third jhana, and equanimity will take you to the fourth jhana. It says that in one place in the Visuddhimagga, and then in the another place it follows what the suttas actually say, that the loving kindness will take you to the fourth jhana, and compassion will take you to the first arupa jhana, and joy will take you to the second arupa jhana, and equanimity will take you to the third arupa jhana. That's as far as the Brahma Viharas will take you. But that doesn't mean that that's the end of the line. You still have more to go. Now, anybody that experiences a jhana, doesn't matter if you only experience it once in your life, you have the potential to attain nibbana in this lifetime. Nice, huh?
Bhante, what jhana? Arupa or any jhana?
Any jhana. You have the potential to attain nibbana. It just means that you have to keep at it. Not just experience it one time and say, well, I'm set, that's it.
Been there, done that.
And you will be reborn in a Brahmaloka. Now, the merit that you make from attaining the jhana is very, very strong. And it's a happy experience, and at the moment of your death, you will remember that experience. That's how strong it is. And then you'll be reborn in a Brahmaloka, which lasts lots longer than the Devalokas do.
At which stage of the Arupa jhana then will be born in the Brahmaloka?
At any jhana,
At any jhana.
not just Arupa, all jhanas. Rupa and Arupa. When you get into the Arupa jhanas, you start getting into realms where you last for long time. Okay, there's a period of time that's called an asankaya. Okay, now the universe is continually expanding and contracting. An asankaya is one expansion. Before it stops for an asankaya, and then it starts contracting for an asankaya, and then it stops for an asankaya. Now those four are called a mahakapa. A mahakapa in years that we understand, is a 10 with 540 zeros behind it. That's a fairly long period of time. When you get into the fourth jhana, and you don't go any higher and you die, you will be reborn in a Brahmaloka that lasts for 500 mahakapas. When you get into the Arupa jhanas, and you don't go any further and you would die, you would last for the first Arupa jhana, it lasts for 16,000 mahakapas. If it's the second Arupa jhana, it lasts for 30. Is it 30? 30,000 mahakapas.
It's hard to remember back then.
That was interesting. We have to see David investigated the charts, and David computed that. What was that?
How many zeros it would take?
How many miles of zeros it would take.
The highest at 84,000 mahakapas took 50 miles of zeros.
On his computer, which is just a little tiny computer.
Yeah, the little tiny zero. And we had to line them all up. I used rulers and calculated all this. It's online. You can see it all.
5 miles.
Almost.
And remember, each one is 10 times bigger than the next. Each number.
Sure, but I mean, it was.
So it's a lot.
So it's a long time.
Get through the recession anyway.
There's a good chance.
So a formless jhana is a massive bailout.
But now, to attain Nibbana, if you're born in Brahmaloka, how do we do that? I mean,
You don't in the Brahmaloka.
then you have to come back again to...
You have to come back at least to the Devaloka. And what happens is, eventually your merit expires. Okay? Then you'll die from that realm, and you'll be reborn in a lower Brahmaloka. And when you expire from that, then you'll be reborn in a Devaloka. And then when you are die from that realm, it's a crapshoot where you're reborn. You can be reborn in a hell realm. You can be reborn in an ogre realm, in an animal realm. You can be reborn as a human being. It depends on your past karma.
So maybe it's a good idea to kind of have meditation on your mind as you're going, because if you had meditation on your mind, or you were meditating as you were going, when you came back, you'd start meditating early on, and maybe you would reach Nibbana in that lifetime.
Yeah.
It's
It's easiest to attain Nibbana in the Devaloka, because all you have to do is hear the Dhamma, and you will be able to attain Nibbana there. But most people don't do that, because there's lots of pleasurable things in the Devaloka, and they don't take time to listen. They're out playing, listening to music, partying in one way or another. So they get reborn into the human realm. And the human realm has enough suffering so that we start thinking about, yeah, maybe it'd be good to get off this wheel. But you have to be reborn at a time when the Buddha era is in effect. We're incredibly lucky to be reborn so close to a Buddha. I mean, it's a rare occurrence. It doesn't happen very often. Maybe, well, this Mahakappa, it's happening 6 times. It's already happened 5. There's only one more. And that might be in 100,000 years. Who knows? When the next Buddha, when the conditions are right for him to be reborn. And there's huge, long distances of time where there's no Buddha at all. So you just keep getting wrapped up in your samsara. You keep coming back until you are lucky enough to be reborn in a Buddha era. I had one student in Malaysia that was very good at remembering past lives, and he remembered himself being a Samanera with the Buddha.
Wow.
And he was a great meditator. I mean, I barely had to say anything to him, and he just got it. He went really deep, really quickly. Anyway. So best to work right now. Get off the wheel so you don't have to put up with being a teenager again. Remember how hard it was being a teenager? Anything else? Yeah.
This actually goes back to last night. You were talking about the enlightenment factors.
Yeah.
And joy being a balancing factor and mindfulness being energizing. Because I always heard joy as being energizing, but probably we're not talking about the all-pervasive, but mindfulness as being the balancing.
You have to have mindfulness, and it has to be very sharp for overcoming any hindrance. It's not an energizer, it's just an observation of. But joy is definitely an energizer.
Interest.
Huh?
Interest was the energizer, kind of.
Well, yeah, interest helps with that. Your energy, learning how to work with it. Investigation helps you energize. But the mindfulness itself is just the observation.
Yeah, that's what it is. I guess I misheard you last night.
Quick. Yes. I noticed tanha and lopa are the same meaning.
Tanha is craving. Loba is greed, lust. It has tanha in it, and so does moha and
Dosa.
dosa. Yeah. They all have craving. They all have the tanha in them. Yeah.
Can you say something about consciousness as the second link? What? There's consciousness and a third link. And there's
This
feeling.
is the potential for consciousness to arise. It always has. It is always there.
But it's
It
not.
doesn't arise until there's some kind of contact.
Mhm.
You have to have a good working eye. There has to be color and form. Good working eye hits color and form. Eye consciousness arises. The meeting of these three is called contact. But the potential for the consciousness happens very, very soon. The mentality, materiality, and the sixfold base are concomitant.
Okay.
Those are concomitant. So yeah, it sounds like it all arises at once. Really, it has to. I mean, not quite, but the consciousness has to be there, and then. But
Yeah,
it's,
the potential for it is there.
otherwise, the feeling you couldn't be conscious of it if there wasn't a consciousness.
Feeling comes after.
Or is
Feeling
feeling
comes after
conscious?
contact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the contact is there and feeling arises, that consciousness is there to see that because of the contact. Now, some places in the suttas, it doesn't talk about 12 links. It talks about 9 links. It doesn't talk about ignorance or the sixfold base or something else. Can't think of it. Have to go back and look and I'll get back to you on that. Yeah.
Am I remembering that you said feelings will arise? There's no
Feeling arises by itself.
by itself. So the stuff before that, like
That's-
it's like seems like it's really efficient to go right here and work here, but you kind of can't.
Well, you're not able to see it. Where you first start seeing things is at feeling.
So that's where you can deal with it, but all the rest is behind it.
Well, until you get deep enough,
Then you can
you can start seeing other things.
Isn't that inherent in the consciousness?
What?
Vedana, feeling.
Inherent
It-
in the
well, it
consciousness.
comes-
Well, the
arises
consciousness
with each
arises
consciousness.
arises just before the feeling arises.
Oh. Consciousness arises before the feeling arises?
It's part of contact
It's part of contact.
with
Yeah,
whatever's
yeah.
happening.
But
They're real
what I
close.
was,
It's a
I think I have heard that it is arising simultaneously or together. It's not separate from it.
No.
Each consciousness brings that with it. The feeling. I mean,
Well,
it's
they're so close together. They
Yeah.
don't arise at exactly the same time,
uh-huh.
but they're so close together. It's hard to tell them apart.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, when one couldn't arise without the other anyway.
Right. If there's no contact, feeling is not going to arrive.
Yes.
Yeah. Who?
Me.
Okay.
Was that already there?
You got
But I'm still not sure.
Should I say him?
I was
I
scratching
mean,
myself.
for example, it refers to the sensory consciousness. So, seeing consciousness. comes with the feeling.
No, the feeling arises right
With
after
the
that.
consciousness.
It rises right after that.
Ah, the
Right
feeling.
Yeah, the feeling arises right after the
But
contact
as you
occurs.
said, very close.
Yeah, they're very close.
So not to be separated actually.
Well,
Yeah.
they
Can
are
you-
separate. They
can
are
you-
different things. Yeah,
Can you separate the feeling from consciousness?
yeah.
Oh,
The
what
consciousness
is your
arises
miracle?
first because of the mentality, materiality, and the 6 days.
Ah.
But it all happens
Yeah,
in very quickly.
yeah.
It's like saying,
Seeing
can
consciousness.
you separate craving and clinging?
Yeah.
Well, they're definitely
That's
two
right.
different things. And contact
yeah.
with the consciousness in it,
Yeah.
contact and feeling are two separate things.
That's
But
right.
they're happening very closely together, but they don't arise at exactly the same time.
But they are recognizable, therefore.
It's an
Well, the contact also has perception in it.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I see what you're saying.
I wonder why you don't use the word Vedana. Is that different?
Vedana is feeling.
No,
No,
it's,
so it's
yeah,
feeling.
see.
Arises with
I just,
consciousness.
because Americans aren't very familiar with Pali, I generally stay away from the Pali words,
Yeah, but
is the
feeling
only
in
reason.
American language,
Okay, that was
it's more this.
Yeah, I understand.
Is that there is a refined difference
there's-
between
there's-
Vedana and feeling.
Well,
Yeah.
not really.
No?
Because it's always defined in the suttas, it's always defined as there is pleasant, there is painful,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
neither
right.
painful nor pleasant.
Yeah.
And it's, in these books, it's done all in English,
right.
without the Pali word. And because Americans aren't very familiar with Pali, I generally don't like to use a lot of
Okay.
Pali words because
That's
it's
what
not
we learn
so
about.
easily understood.
But it gives a little bit different, the difference.
Well, the thing
Feeling.
is, the word feeling by itself
Yeah,
is painful, pleasant, neither
Yeah,
painful nor
right.
pleasant. But it's always said as feelings, and that means emotion, and that's where it gets confused.
that's right.
Because if you look at the chart, the emotion doesn't happen until craving, clinging, and habitual
That's
tendency.
right.
If you look on the chart.
Yeah,
And this is where we get confused because the Buddha was refined in what he's explaining concerning emotions, but the psychologist is behaving right now saying to the person, well, feeling is emotion, but it's not.
no.
Feeling is feeling, and emotion has to evolve. So what happens between feeling and where emotion happens, and how does that happen, is very important to
But in our
understand.
language, we mean actually emotions by feeling. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, but I take great pains to let people know that feeling is just feeling.
Yeah,
It's just pleasant, painful, neither painful
Yeah.
nor pleasant.
Yeah, here's one. You can't
Very
have feeling
refined.
without consciousness. You
Right.
can't have consciousness without
yeah.
feeling.
That's why I
Because
like to
contact
feel
arises first.
Okay, you got it.
What a mind, huh?
That's what I was
The
saying.
Buddha had.
Oh,
Could
what a
see.
brilliant mind.
I'm so in wonderment about it when I see these subtleties.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. It makes me appreciate him so much.
me too. I just bow down where I am and see
Yeah.
him.
You know, I had an interesting experience once in Seattle. On the way to Seattle, there was a woman that we were going to meet, and the woman was a PhD in cognitive psychology, and she was asking me to teach her dependent origination. So I was using this chart, and I was explaining it to her piece by piece. I didn't know she was a PhD in cognitive psychology. She was just a student of Bhante's that we were going to go meet. And then she pointed out to me she was, and she was going like, oh, as I was going through this. And apparently that we can teach her a PhD in cognitive neurological psychology. This is like, we can teach her things she didn't even learn as a PhD in cognitive psychology. And I found this fascinating. So when I got to her house, she showed me the texts she was using and how they had been trained in her PhD level about this material, and there were missing pieces. And the Buddha had refined it well beyond where she had been trained, and I thought it was really interesting.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
All the experience is missing then with her. If she would meditate and would have the experience, she would not miss that much.
She began to realize, as she began to go along, she began to realize that these refinements were real. But it's difficult because you're watching a movie and, he's talking about the frames, individual frames of the movie film. And we're accustomed to watching the movie. It's different.
Okay. So why don't we share somewhere?
Suffering free and may we share all grief and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have acquired for the realization of all crimes and godliness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, the dealers and hours of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.